piece of junk.
Hi and welcome to this edition of Trash Compactor. In this episode I'm going to be making a custom version of the Luke Skywalker Snowspeeder figure from the Hoth Planet adventure game. So with the Hoth game you get this retro figure which comes with a version of Luke with a fixed helmet, and it has his lightsaber and harpoon. The picture on the box shows Luke with his helmet off, as they often do. It's a shame they didn't use a picture of Luke with his actual helmet on climbing out the snowspeeder. I'm going to try and make this a little bit more realistic and take the helmet off and make him look a little bit more Hoth than the actual figure does. So I'm going to take it off the packet. I'm just cutting into the bubble. I'm not a carded collector, so I always take everything off the card. When I originally started doing my practice run for this, just to see how it would come together, the first figure I took out of the box had one leg a lot shorter than the other, which I believe they call is a short paw or something. So you can see the one that I've got on the left was the first one I took out, which had the really short leg. So I chopped the leg off, inserted a little bit of the little circular part from another figure just to extend the leg and glued them together. So I'm still going to be utilising that figure and putting the Luke head onto it. So this is a Bespin Luke head, which is just a mould and head that I actually like. And you can see on the vintage collection figures there's I think that's a wedge. They always had the grey hooded part over the top with the little pads which goes under the helmet because of course Hoth is cold. So I want to try and replicate this on the heads that I'm going to put onto the figures. So I've been looking at making Dax as well. Dak, not Dax, I always call him Dax, it's Dak. Shortest role in the film. Feels like he could take on the Empire and squash dead within 5 minutes. So I was thinking, what head could I use? So I've been looking through my spare parts box and looking for various different heads, and I think the one that I'm going to go with is going to be this large Han head, and I'll shave it down a bit, take the hair off so it fits into the helmet and also levels it out so I can make the grey hood and put that onto this figure. So of course first thing you've got to do when you're doing anything with heads is pop and boil them. So I'm going to pop the figures into some hot water. So he's been sat in the hot water for a little while, and I just need to grab a tea towel because it's still quite hot and the head pops off the retro figures quite easily. Empty the water out. The pegs that they've got going into them are a lot shorter than the original vintage figures. They've also sort of like changed the design a little bit, as you can see, compared to the Han head, which is a lot longer and the hole is quite big, so it just drops in quite easily. So I'm going to have to make some amendments to that head to be able to get it to go in and stay in. So the way I'm going to fix the Han head on to the retro Snowspeeder Luke body is using a small Lego part. These little Lego pins fit brilliantly into a lot of different holes and a lot of different figures, and are a great way of actually creating a new neck. You may have seen them done by the Craftman on Steady Crafting, awesome channel if you don't subscribe to that. And then of course Palitoy, he's also done them as well. So as you can see, I'm going to be using the Lego piece. I've got this black one here which I think is a little bit too long, but the grey one fits in, but it will need to be glued to create a new peg. And then the idea is that I can then bevel into the head to create the hole, and then it will fix on and stay onto the figure. I have got some Lego heads that I bought because I was thinking some Lego helmets, because I was thinking, as I did with the Captain Rex using old Ben's head for my Endor figure, you can use the Lego Endor helmets and they fit onto his head quite well. But the Lego helmets come up really small, so they're not really a suitable alternative, which is a shame because the detail on the Lego helmets is amazing and would save a lot of effort and time painting and sticking on decals. So what I'm going to have to do is Dremel out this head, removing the, as you can see, removing the neck pin completely. Now ideally the way to Dremel it out would be to Dremel it out and leave the visor, but it's a shame because the visor isn't transparent, so you're going to have this solid block of yellow, which will work, but it's up to you. You could take it away and actually insert a little bit of clear orange plastic. Using your scalpel craft knife is cut into where you want to Dremel, just so you can get a little bit of a neater edge when you're Dremeling out. So I'm cutting around the visor and the sides of the helmet, so when I start to Dremel I've got a little bit of a guideline where I want my Dremel to chisel the plastic out. This is quite time consuming, but it is completely worth it. You see, just taking out a little bit of the excess of his face. And be careful, because the last thing you want to do is cut into the sides of the helmet, but if you do, you can just patch it, glue it, paint it, cover it up. Now I'm going to grab my various different Dremel tools. There's quite a few different grinding tools, different shapes. It's best just to choose what works best for you and what you're doing at the time. I've got a globe one I like to use, I've got a flat-ended one, I've got a funnel shaped one, I've got a cone, and then I've also got the metal tools, which have got a very fine sort of file on the end, which is good for just getting the initial part out of the plastic. But again, go nice and slow, because the last thing you want to do is go straight through to the other side of the helmet and stick a big hole in the back. So this is just slow and steady wins the race. So after a few Dremel tools, I've now got to the point where I can use the larger, rounder one. Have to be careful when taking this in and out, because when it doesn't fit perfectly into the sides of the helmet, and you don't want to take any off the sides. So as you can see, it fits in nicely, but you've got to squeeze the helmet, or put it in as I'm doing here, and hold it as you start it up, but be very careful because it could fly off across the room. And it does take it away quite quickly, so make sure you put your Dremel on a slow speed. So I'm taking this at lots of angles. Where there's lots of feathering inside, I'm just using my Stanley knife, craft knife, to just cut away a little bit of the extra feathering of the plastic. And again, Dremel, 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 lots of Dremeling in this one. So putting it up against light, you can see how thick it is. So this gives you a guide of how far you've gone before you go all the way through. And as you can see, I'm trying to get it onto the head, but it's quite tight, which is good. But the trouble is, unless that neck joint's going to be tight, when I try and take that helmet off, it's just going to pull the neck off. So I've got to make it a little bit looser. So because I've held it up to the light, I can sort of see where the thick areas are, where I've got the possibility of taking out a bit more of the plastic. And again, using the big rounded tool on my my Dremel, that's going to allow me to level it out a little bit. So just neaten that up with my Stanley knife. You can see I'm cutting the sides of the visor, which is just allowing me to get into the helmet. And then using a little bit of sandpaper, just gently sanding down the edges just so they're a little bit more smooth. That's the trouble with Dremeling, it does feather the plastic and you do end up with little burrs everywhere, but sand them off when you can. So roll the sandpaper up into a little funnel shape, that will help get into the inside of the helmet. And then I can squeeze that into the helmet, twist it around a few times, and that will take off some of the burrs. So I've pretty much done the helmet. It fits on the head quite nicely. It's still a little bit tight, but what I'm going to be doing with this hand head is actually taking some of the plastic off just to smooth away the hair. So using my Dremel, just going to gently smooth this off, taking in the back of the nape of the neck, a bit of the sideburns, and some of the, leaving a bit of the fringe on, because I want it to look like his hair's sticking out of where his grey hood's going to go. Though Han's a very distinctive figure, once you've got him in the helmet, you can pull him off as sort of being another character. I tend to find in a lot of my customs it's always Hans and Luke's body parts that I tend to use for other figures. I think it's just because there's so many different versions of them. And then after Dremeling, just giving the sand all over. And the way to do this, because it's not a flat area, I'm putting it on a tea towel so it's soft, or maybe a sponge, something soft, and then pressing onto the sandpaper, and that gives it a soft cushion to sand around the curved areas. So now I want to sort out the neck. So what I'm doing is I'm working out, using a piece of Lego, what is going to be the best option for getting this neck joint in. And I think my best option is going to be to use this trailer part, because then what I do, if I can fit that in, I can then use the ball socket into it. But as you can see, the part that I was thinking of putting in is not going to work, but the ball joint will fit nicely into the hole. So I think that's going to be how I attach the head to the body. So I'm going to snip off the hand neck, so I'm no longer going to need that, it's way too long. And then I'm going to drill into the hand head to give the red ball joint from the Lego trailer part somewhere to purchase into. So gently drilling into that, making sure I don't go too far down, because the last thing I want to do is go all the way through. So I've roughly worked out how long my pin needs to be. Snip that off, and then I can glue that into the head. So there we are, I've glued that into the head, and I'll give that some time to dry off. So trying to put the head into the helmet, as you can see it's still a little bit tight, so I think what I'm going to do is just try to take out a little bit more from the inside. And I think half my problem is also the visor. So you can leave this on, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut the visor off, which will give the helmet a little bit more room, and then I'm going to put a visor on myself. So this is going to allow me to get the Dremeling and be a little bit more brutal with how much I take away from the inside, because I'm no longer needing to try to protect the visor. So what I need to do on his head is I need to create the grey circle pads that sit on the side of the hood that they wear on the inside of their helmets. So seeing as I've got a little bit of the plastic lying around, I'm going to use the piece of Hans' neck. Cut a couple of very small slithers. And the idea with these is then what I'll do, I will glue these onto the side and then sand them down. And you can use the neck or any of the little bits of plastic you've got lying around. So give them a good sand to flatten them down, and that allows the helmet to go on and off quite nicely without being too tight. So when I do paint the head, it's not going to get a lot of paint rub from the helmet because it's not going to be too tight. And as you can see, the Lego helmet, just not an option, just wouldn't fit. So the ball joint's dried really nicely, and as you can see, that now pops perfectly into the retro figure's neck. It does give it a little bit of movement, which is absolutely fine. I could place a little bit of plastic around it if I wanted to make it a little bit more secure, but I'm totally happy with that. So for the helmet decals, I'm going to be using the Palitoy PDF sticker sheet that he sells on his site. They've got nice little decals. You just need to get yourself some transparent sticky paper. You could put these on water slide decal paper if you wanted. This is actually just a sticker sheet, transparent paper. I've got a leather belt hole punch, which, you know, is for leather belts. It is possible to use the various different sized holes to stamp around your sticker, and this gives you a really nice round edge. It doesn't cut all the way through, but it does cut the main sticker paper, and then all you need to do is use your scalpel as a guidance to get around the edges. If you go a little bit wonky, there's so many on this sheet, it doesn't really matter, you just keep going along until you get a nice neat round indent into the sticker sheet. As you can see, I've put a little bit of tape and something rubbery at the bottom, so when it pushes into it, it's got something to squish into. And there you go, you see I've got a really nice indent, and 99% of the time it will just peel off. If you do get an edge that's attached, it's just a case, cut it with your Stanley knife or craft knife. So the paper's completely come away, but the sticker just needs to be sliced off from the edge. It's fiddly, but it's worth it. Now it's just a case of putting on stickers. Good thing about these stickers, if you do pop it in the wrong place, peel it off and stick it back on. It's not going to become permanent until you stick on a level layer of gloss or anything like that, or satin varnish. So I'm going to do that for both sides. Now for a bit of painting. So first thing I'm going to do is paint his hairline, just going over the dark brown paint with another brown, just so it doesn't look directly like Han's hair. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just so the hair sticks out a little bit from the hood once it's painted on. Whatever colour you do, it's entirely up to you. I just went with this Humbrol acrylic brown, and in hindsight probably should use a smaller brush so I can get up to the edges. So I'll leave that paint to dry for a little bit. So now that's dried off, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing some grey, a nice matte acrylic, and then I'm painting the ear pads and the hood. So I'm going to use my plastic cutters just to hold the head while it dries. So I've just popped the head in the snipper bits, making sure they don't close, because the last thing I want to do is cut it off, and then I've stuck an elastic band on them just to keep it steady. This just allows me to do a little bit more touching up. And once I've done my touch ups, then I'm just going to leave that to dry. So on the helmet I cut away the visor. Well, what I've done is I found a little bit of plastic, and I've snipped away a little bit of that and going to use that as the visors on my helmets. And it's a case of sticking a little bit of glue on, and then I'm just going to tack that onto the base bit of the helmet, hold it in place while it dries. I think this just gives it an extra dimension rather than using the solid orange one that they had on the original helmet. It would have been nice to have kept it, but it just didn't allow me to get into the helmet properly to be able to take out enough. So now using the satin varnish, what I'm going to do is give the helmet a coat, including the visor. That'll help it look a little bit more transparent. Paint all completely over the top. So I've got Dax's helmet, Dax helmet, I always call him Dax, Dax's Star Trek. And then just leave that to dry off. The head has dried off, so I want to see if that works nicely and fits onto the figure. So I can squeeze that neck joint back into the figure, which has now got a bit of paint on it, so it's sort of made it a little bit tighter, which is good. And now the helmet should squeeze on. I didn't really glue it down the sides of the visor because I was worried that that would then pop off as I'm trying to get the helmet on off. But as you can see, that sort of fits on quite nicely and gives me a nice removable helmet off Dak. His outfit's completely the same as Luke's. You could paint the gloves a different shade if you wanted to. You could paint the boots, but there we are. We've got a companion for our snow speeder Luke, who's had nothing done to him, so you could leave him as he is. Take his helmet off, he can hold it and stand next to Luke. The only problem is Luke's helmet doesn't come off, so what I really want to do is put on a different head onto Luke and do exactly the same as I did on Dak. So Luke can hold his helmet, the same decals, and get the stripes as they are, just touch them up from the original figure. And there we go, I've got my Dak and Hoth Luke all ready to take on the Empire. They are with their helmets on. And unfortunately we all know how it ends for Dak. So there you go, there's a more screen realistic version of Dak and Luke. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I will make another one where I use the custom helmets that I made in my from my Etsy store, which are in transparent resin, and just show you if you ever want to buy those and use those instead of dremeling out the heads, then you can use those, and it will be a guide on literally just how to paint them and replace the ones that we've done here. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more in the future or suggest some potential future makes, please subscribe.
What a piece of junk!